listening to Scaling Up Services, where we speak with entrepreneurs, authors, business experts, and thought leaders to give you the knowledge and insights you need to scale your service-based business faster and easier. And now, here is your host, business coach Bruce Eckfeldt.
Are you a CEO looking to scale your company faster and easier? Check out Thrive Roundtable. Thrive combines a moderated peer group mastermind, expert one-on-one coaching, access to proven growth tools, and a 24/7 support community. Created by Inc. award-winning CEO and certified scaling up business coach Bruce Eckfeldt, Thrive will help you grow your business more quickly and with less drama. For details on the program, visit eckfeldt.com/thrive. That's ECKFELDT.com/thrive.
Welcome, everyone. This is Scaling Up Services. I'm Bruce Eckfeldt. I'm your host. And our guest today is Jake Dunlap. He is CEO of Skaled Consulting. Jake's been on the program before, but I wanted to bring him back and talk a little bit about how to approach sales in this global pandemic, this COVID-19 situation we're in. We're recording this the end of April. We've been in this a couple of weeks now. Best guess, we're going to be in it for a while. It's certainly going to impact the economy. It's going to impact business for many weeks to come, many months to come. So wanted to have this conversation. So Jake, welcome to the program.
Awesome. Look, it's good to be back and, looking forward to at least hopefully giving some nuggets here to help folks as they're, going through this right now.
Yeah. So let's kind of talk about, the situation at this point is, businesses are still locked down. It looks like we're coming out of the social isolation, shelter in place kind of thing. In the coming weeks, at least different parts of the country are kind of getting released to some extent. But, business has changed. What's your kind of take on how you kind of sum up or how you kind of see the new world order as it relates to kind of marketing and sales and this whole kind of prospecting area? What's the impact or how have things changed for you?
Yeah, and I think that this is important. Look, if you're a CEO, an entrepreneur, I think it's important for anyone who's running a business too. But like you said, I think we see now whether we're over the crest or we can kind of start to peek over what's on the other side. It feels like we're kind of getting there, and I talk to probably 20 to 30 CEOs, VPs of sales, VPs of marketing every week. And I can just tell you like the temperature is, okay, things are kind of gradually, kind of like people didn't miss their numbers as bad as they thought and not as many deals pushed as they thought. So overall, I think it's the attitude is starting to kind of like we're going through this optimism. I'll tell you, I was talking to the head of marketing at a CMO at a company called Trip Actions last night, and I've talked to her a few times. And I think the question I'd asked her a question too about this kind of idea of the pivot, they pivoted super hard, right? They were in the corporate travel space, right? So they had to make a massive pivot. They, unfortunately, they had to do some layoffs. But what they did is they literally, in one weekend, they pulled out every single one of their sequences. They had 60 plus sequences, pulled all of them out, worked the entire weekend, and updated the entire messaging and put it back in. And
really?
And so as we talked about that, and I was talking to the team at G2, it's a big software review site, same thing. They created a whole new playbook for the team, got the whole sales team certified on it. Here's how we're talking to marketing. Here's how we're talking about events and virtual and all this stuff. And I think what I feel like happened is that over the last 4 to 5 years, we got satisfied with incremental small changes. 1% tweak here, 2%. And we stopped being creative. We stopped looking for, this concept of incremental gains versus monumental leaps. We stopped looking for monumental leaps, and we had been in a coma for the last marketing and sales for the last 3 to 4 years in particular. We got all these new sales technologies. They helped us to do all these little optimizations, and we stopped innovating. What I feel like is going to come on the other side is a renewed appreciation for the customer's, messaging and customer experience. And so if you ask me the question about what I think marketers learned and sales leaders learned, and hopefully CEOs, is you have to be specific. You have to really understand what your customers are going through. You can't keep sending the same generic stuff and you're wondering why your response rates are lower than ever, et cetera. I think we have a new appreciation for the customer coming on the other side of this, and we're getting more specific and tailored and customized with our messaging. This forced us to do it, but I think we're going to do a better job of it on the other side too.
Was the change just making everything virtual? Or, what else has changed in terms of the messaging? To the extent that these people went in and rewrote their entire sequences, what were the changes they made?
Well, if you think about it, there were different buckets that people started to get looped into. Everyone immediately at first went into what I called the turtle shell bucket, which is we can't sell. It's impossible.
Yeah.
We have to just, say, hey, I know times are hard, generic, fake empathy. I'd love to catch up. Let's talk in 2 to 4 weeks. So a lot of sales teams ran to that. And what they didn't really appreciate is, look, there's 3 buckets. There's people actually in industries that are doing just fine.
Yeah.
They weren't affected, right?
Yeah.
If you're selling bread makers, you just had your most all-time ever. It's the best time ever to sell bread makers and yeast ever, right?
Yeah.
And that's a very micro example, but there's a lot of other industries that are doing fine. And then there's industries on the flip side of the bucket that are doing really bad, like tourism, hospitality, all these things.
Events.
And then there's a whole bunch of companies that actually fell in this third bucket, which I call the middle, where if they could just reposition a little bit of who the product, what the product does, that then they could be more hey, we can help you right now. And I think that's what it was. It's looking for, so what they did at Trip Actions, for example, is they've pivoted everything. They got their dev team and they stopped talking about, corporate travel as much, but they did start to talk about worker safety, what countries are blacklisted, up to date, getting a live feed from the CDC. So then you can manage your people remotely, kind of manage the travel and how they come out the other side of it.
It's interesting. It's almost like figuring out, well, what is the new problem my customer has and how do I address that?
That's exactly it. So I was talking to a well-established human capital management company. They've been in business for 15 years, 500 plus employees, and they usually were leading with their compensation tool. Nobody's thinking about comp plans right now. So as we talked about, we talked about it, we worked with them, we said, okay, what's the next thing that usually gets your foot in the door? Well, we've got this performance management. Okay, well, let's talk about that a little bit. And it's okay, so we don't sell a performance management tool, we sell a remote work engagement tool. Same product, same features, but instead we're changing the positioning. And I feel like it's forced us to be smart again. It's forced us as sales leaders and marketers to have to really think, what are our customers going through? And no matter how we think we should position it, what's going to resonate with them right now? And I think that's the important
And
piece.
how have you seen any interesting strategies for people to actually develop that insight? Because I think it's easy to kind of, all my clients are in crisis, so I'm going to go out with this crisis. But as you mentioned, some people are fine. How do you get that information? How do you have that conversation, or how do you do that research to really understand what are my customers going through? Because you may not know, or it may not be obvious to you.
Well, Bruce, this is going to be rocket science. You go talk to your customers.
Softball there, yeah.
Go talk to your customers. Jesus. Yeah. That's the other thing. It's funny. So again, same conversation I was having. So I do a Wednesday wind down that I've been doing just for marketers. We've had 20 plus marketers there every single Wednesday and Wednesday night. I, might have 1, maybe 2 glasses of Pinot Noir. We talk marketing.
Changes the conversation.
Yeah, and then maybe it's 3 sometimes. Who knows, right? So what we were talking about this last Wednesday, and I posed a question. I really put them on the spot, and I said, look, I said, well, tell me about how you view your current customers as a part of this, and they're like, yeah, da 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 da, and then it's like, are we going to carry that through with us? Is marketing? And then when I realized, holy shit, this girl called it out in the chat. Marketers aren't incentivized to retain customers. And it's kind of interesting. You're like, oh yeah, they aren't. And it's it's kind of this obvious. I was like, I don't know how I didn't see this before, but I'm like, that is a problem. Yeah. And I feel like what we are going to see though is a renewed focus on customer satisfaction and customer happiness. That we're going to have to. Our buyer behaviors have been changing. We haven't been keeping up. Marketers have been doing the same bullshit, ebook to gated content to blog. They've been running the same play for 10 years, man. HubSpot developed that play in 2010, and we've been running the same play. Now marketers are realizing, look, these people want access to information quickly. They want less friction. They want this stuff. And here's what my buyers are going through. So talk to your customers. And I think marketing departments and other people are going to be doing a better job of that going forward. I hope.
Yeah. Have you seen any issues? I've run into a couple issues where, the company themselves is in crisis and they're trying to figure out how to sell and pitch to companies that are not necessarily in crisis, but it's a real kind of headspace game. Anything that you've seen or any strategies that you've kind of worked with for companies that they're in crisis, right? Their business model is upside down, but they're trying to sell and they're just stuck in kind of the mindset and the kind of the position, the mental position of being in this fear, but they're trying to sell and the people that they're trying to sell to are not necessarily in crisis. How do you deal with that situation?
Well, as a CEO or someone who's a leader in that organization, it's your job to soften the blow and to help to create the messaging, show the people there's another side to this. You might have to make some tough decisions. We had to do a small kind of workforce reduction, and we did it quick. It was apparent to me look, the next month or 2 months were going to be difficult and we needed to make some changes. And so we made the changes and we're stronger, kind of leaner and better on the other side of it. And it was unfortunate, but I think think that's just part of running a company. Guess what, friends? It's not all upside economy. Guess what? This is what running a business looks like. And if you just want to run a business where it's only in the easy times, then, you probably should just quit or sell every 5 years. I feel like you just have to make the decisions for the business, that you need to make. And then you've got to be able to make the decisions and insulate the team, from give them hope and inspire hope with the team. And that's your job. And go confide in your buddies and other people and peers and, peer groups. And, you do a great job of that, Bruce, and have those conversations. But to your team, they need to see you as a person. You can be vulnerable, and I'm like overtly transparent about our cash flow, everything with our team. But also I know that, look, they're looking to me to do that. And it's my job, as a CEO, to make sure that they feel, hey, that we're going to take care of you. And if we need help, we're going to ask them for help. Hey, guys, we need you to do this or that. And then you kind of see what kind of team you have too.
Yeah, it's hard. Sometimes you got to make tough calls. I know that you were in New York during the various kind of crises we've had with 9/11 and Sandy and blackouts and things like that. But I really feel like this one's different in many respects. I mean, as a CEO who's been kind of through crises of different times and different sorts, how have you kind of sort of seen this one as, similar and or different in terms of how you need to respond or kind of the strategic planning you need to do? I'm just kind of curious in your take as having been through some of these before, what your take is on this one.
I mean, for me, I was still in college in 9/11. I was still Bruce. You're trying to date me here. But I'll tell you, I mean, I really grew up in my sales career during 2007 through 2010. I worked at Career Builder, which at the time was the largest job site in the U.S. So I was managing a team that was selling jobs between 2007 and 2010. and I've learned this about myself, and it's a weakness in other times, but I love it. Like, I'm built for it. I'm what you would refer to as I don't think that there's been times I've been a great peacetime CEO. I'm built for pivots. That's why I started a sales consulting company, because I like the pivots, et cetera. So by the nature of our business, I think we were more prepared for this. And for me, my mindset is it is what it is. So why spend any time dwelling on why this has happened, how this has happened? I was thinking about what if something happens well in advance of this, right? What happens if the economy goes bad? We've been on a pretty all-time run. It's going to happen. And if you as a CEO or VP of sales were caught with your pants down, that's partially on you too. Guys, there was going to be, now was it going to be quarantine? You couldn't isolate for all the variables of why it happened or how it would happen, but you did know that something would happen. So for us, what we knew would happen is this, and I'll just play it out for you. We knew that there would come a period where the economy would take a downturn. What would happen is people would lose jobs just like they do. Then what the companies would want to do is they're going to hire back. Are they going to hire back in full force, or are they going to want to hire part-time people, right? Staff augmentation, contractors, people that they can potentially replace down the road. They're not tied to fixed headcount. Mm-hmm. Guess what we do? We do part-time sales operations, part-time sales leadership. So that's not the messaging we led with in April, but you better believe that's the whole marketing plan in May.
Yeah.
So we've been thinking through how is this thing going to ride out? So I feel one, these times always happens as a CEO or sales leader or marketing leader. You need to be prepared for those, and you need to think about it. And then two, just try to think there will be another side of this, and how are you going to position yourself as the things play out?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think this whole thing has accelerated, a whole bunch of trends. I think the whole kind of gig economy thing is definitely being pushed forward. What else do you see? What else do you think are going to be kind of general changes to the way business operates that people need to kind of have on their strategic plan or their roadmap in terms of figuring out how they need to kind of change their offering, their positioning, how they operate to kind of address the new world that's going to be, evolving over the coming months, over coming quarters?
I mean, I'll try to talk to the things that I know versus, speculate, sure. or things that, I guess I can't really know, or things I might have a higher likelihood to be right on. Look, I've seen the trend for a long time of people being very focused on efficiency over effectiveness, that we've developed all these technologies that make it more efficient for us to do things. And again, it goes back to that point of eking out these small changes. And what we've done in a lot of marketing and sales organizations is really just beaten the creativity out of people. We've said, go execute the process. This machine is going to tell you what you should send. And therefore, again, we're always looking for those ones and twos, and the messaging just becomes generic. It becomes generic enough to be applicable to a relevant enough subset to where there appears to be some amount of effectiveness. So I really feel like the big trend is organizations in sales and marketing has done a better job of this historically, just because they've had paid media, so they're used to that kind of optimization culture. I feel like all parts of your revenue organization are going to have to develop that always optimizing mindset. And I feel like, especially in sales organizations, there's a set it and forget it mindset. You build a new playbook, right? That thing runs for a year and you look at it from time to time, as opposed to like you're constantly making small improvements. Same thing with your tech stack. You make an investment, you let it kind of crank for a while. You have this strategy around social where you do X, Y, Z. So I just feel like there's going to be a renewed focus on doing things that are maybe not quite as plug and play. They have elements of plug and play. They're technology enabled, but we're going to have to bring the human kind of like back to it. And that I think we're going to have people being more creative coming out of this. And that I think teams are now going to therefore kind of carry that over and hopefully create better buyer experiences and sales experiences as a part of that. That's I think my big trend, because we've already been heading this way in B2C, right? Like I track you, I show you a cookie, I customize this experience and website. B2B, we have been really lazy around that. It's very one size fits all. Like, oh, you're a finance director, you're the exact same. It's like, well, no, a finance director in a manufacturing company has a completely different set of problems than a finance director in a HR technology company, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
there's margin issues, there's labor issues, and I feel like before it's just like we treat all finance directors like finance directors. And so I feel like there's going to have to be an appreciation for the nuances that maybe it's like we used to have it because we had to. There wasn't that technology didn't exist 10 years ago to just hit send all and do some customizations. You had to kind of dig. And now because so much is spoon fed to people, I think they're not taking that extra step. But I think that's going to change.
Yeah, I definitely have sort of seen this trend in kind of AI and kind of system enhanced processes where, the AI does a great job of gathering data, analyzing it, giving you kind of options and probabilities and things. But, the humans actually need to make the final step of making the call and finding the insight. And
let me give you the perfect example of this, Bruce. Yeah. This is one of my favorite sectors. And we've got a client partner, we've got a tech partner in this too, that I think does a really wonderful job. Predictive forecasting. Okay. The bane of forecasting for sales and marketing organizations has always been, there's actually one major variable. All of the data is based on the salesperson's perspective of what's happening. It's pretty wild if you think about it, right? It's most of the data that's in 99% of the data, other than like what website they visited or, did they accept a calendar invite? There's certain things that these tools are pulling in that is that, if you want to improve your forecasting accuracy, you know what the actual fix is? You train the team how to ask the customer, hey, where are we at in the process? What are the next steps? It's like, you need a predictive forecast? Like, no, you just need to retrain the sales team how to ask better questions. And, so I feel like that's a good example where we were starting to rely more and more on technology instead of just having the human questions. No amount of meeting attendance can tell you that actually Susie's getting ready to go on maternity leave and this, and this is happening. And that's, it's that type of mix of technology and human that I think we're going to see us start to focus on as we go through this. I think we go through these evolutions in sales, and certainly we had the technology evolution over the last 4 to 5 years where we kind of removed a lot of the human. It was very, very human relationship-y. Now it's more technical, and I think we come out the other side with a nice hybrid.
Yeah. I'm curious what you think is going to happen to some of these industries that rely upon these physical events so much. I mean, I operate in a couple of industries that, it's all based on trade shows and, these conferences and things like that. And I mean, I don't think we're going to see any, large gatherings, certainly through the end of 2020 and probably a good part into 2021. I mean, how are these industries that have relied upon, some of these venues and events and stuff to really build these connections? What do you think is going to happen with some of this stuff?
Well, the first thing to come back will be small events, right? So maybe you can do dinners, right? Or you can do and people have been moving that way quite a bit, right? These micro events. Mm-hmm. So I think the first thing to come back will be that. So we'll be able to go back to some of those plays where we do dinners or, small gatherings and conversations. And so I think the key is what you want to be, if you think about this, is you want to be the hub that people to go to for information. And so whether that's via virtual events or physical events. And I think, is there Zoom fatigue? Sure. Is it a thing? Yeah, for sure. And we just ran a conference last week. We had our Sales Engagement Masters conference. We had 1,200 registrants, almost 600 show up. And, look, we had throughout the day, people started to trail off and we learned. We're like, okay, so it ended up being about 5 hours. Okay, that's too long. So maybe next time we do our virtual conference, we'll just do 2 days, 2 hours each day, right? And then, we think that that'll fix some of that fatigue. So I think look, you just got to move to virtual. People are attending. Yeah. We put this thing together in 3 weeks, 1,200 registrants. I mean, over like almost 300 either like VP to C levels attend or register.
Yeah.
So I feel like you got to pivot to that. And then you got to pivot. The other pivot other than just virtual, which is kind of like the easy answer, is I think the idea of like a community around topics, that you need to be the curator around topics that you can own, because then those are communities that you can activate on an ongoing basis and get your customers more involved in those communities too. Using your customers as advocates. I think we're going to see a rise in customer advocacy and bringing that in. There's a really awesome play, actually, this guy, Jeremy from Lead IQ, shared in our Sales Engagement Masters Conference, where their play is what they do is they direct message someone on LinkedIn. They say, hey, current customer, hey, tell me how you find like success with Lead IQ around this pain point. And then the customer responds, they take that, they screenshot it, and they send it to prospects. And I'm like, that's genius. Like everybody should be doing it. Or you send a cold email? Like so stupid, right? Yeah. Like, so I feel like there's a creativity element. There's a customer advocacy, this kind of community customer advocacy. I think that is where my head would go, right? Where what we're trying to do, I can just tell you at Skaled, again, like we're doing this marketing happy hour, right? We want to be a place that if you're looking for like, what are marketers doing in B2B, you come into the happy hour, you learn things, right? We've got different marketers from different companies joining every week, different sales leaders join, kind of do like an Ask Me Anything on Mondays, and we have different sales leaders that rotate in on that. And, we're getting ready to launch a group in May called Revenue Nation, where we're going to be focused on, data and insights for frontline sellers. We've seen that there's a lot of groups out there for sales leaders and for others, but not enough for sellers.
For the sellers themselves. Yeah.
And I think that this idea of community is an important one. And this idea that marketing is not just about asking all the time and selling all the time, but also about, building brand and there is a value in brand equity that I think maybe we forgot about too.
Yeah.
That, as opposed to just everything's performance based. So I think you got to get more creative and think about some of these ideas. There's a lot of companies I think that are doing a really good job of this right now, and they're just building communities around topics. And that's something that you can do. That I was talking to a successful like oceanics company in Nova Scotia, was it Wednesday, and it's like they are like the leader in deep ocean microphones. I'm like, great, you're going to own hashtag ocean sounds, right? Like. It's like, because again, like, will that go viral on Instagram? Maybe. You could put that on TikTok, maybe, right? Like, and you become the ocean sound company, like, and people like you, there's an affinity for you. It also makes people want to work with you. That's what people don't get about brand is like, although they might not have found you through it might be that, but man, then people want to work with you. They're like, oh, wow, that's that guy, or that's that team. So.
Any good practices? I can see a lot of people kind of putting together communities, but in terms of keeping them together long term, leveraging them from really thought leadership position, what are some of the things you can do as a kind of a community manager, community gatherer that's going to make that effective and valuable and ultimately convert for you?
You have to have the community in mind first. The community experience first, selling and marketing to them has to be a very distant second. Why you see so many communities not make it is the intentions become obvious. You see that like, oh, I see what they're doing. Okay, let me go to the next thing, right?
And or they're just waiting. You're waiting for the pitch.
Yeah, that's it, man. So I think, Gary Vaynerchuk talks about this. I'm a big Gary V fan, and he says jab, 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 right hook, right? Where you give, and then you ask. I think most companies, when they build community, they're asking every other thing, or they're promoting something. I think if you really want to do it, you have to maybe understand that community will never have an ROI for you that you can measure. And I think that is a terrifying proposition for marketers. 10 years ago, they'd have been like, yeah, that makes sense. And now it's like, what? Like, why? And I feel like, it's when people ask me, Jake, look, you post on LinkedIn twice a day. What's the ROI of a post? Like, I don't know. I do know that we closed millions of dollars in business from it last year. Yeah. What's the ROI of one post? I don't know.
Yeah.
So I feel like we have to start to invest in some of these things that we might not be able to directly attribute one-to-one ROI with, and that's okay. That marketing is kind of a mix of these brand activities and these more measurable activities.
Yeah, exactly. Jake, there's been a pleasure. If people want to find out more about you, about Skaled, what's the best way to get that information?
Yeah, definitely. Look, if you're trying to work through any marketing or sales, challenges, please reach out. I'm always down to try to help or get someone on the team who can have a conversation at a minimum. You can email me, Jake@Skaled. It's Skaled with a K, so it's SKALED.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's just /Jake Dunlap. So just if you type in Jake Dunlap. If you're looking for kind of bite-sized tips, if you're like, hey, I want to get some more like sales, or if you want to see all the videos that we've been doing and all these webinars I've talked about, I'm on my YouTube. It's Jake Dunlap Sales. And all these different webinars and all these different things, we've been aggregating all of that there. So I think those are some good spots to start.
Perfect. I'll make sure that those links are in the show notes so people can click through.
Thank you.
This has been great. I'm very curious to see how things play out. Maybe we'll do another follow-up in a couple of months.
We'll see. I'll take my Nostradamus hat off. We'll see if I was remotely correct.
We'll open the envelope. and see what we got right. Thank you so much for taking the time today. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Bruce.
You've been listening to Scaling Up Services with business coach Bruce Eckfeldt. To find a full list of podcast episodes, download the tools and worksheets, and access other great content, visit the website at scalingupservices.com. And don't forget to sign up for the free newsletter at scalingupservices.com/newsletter.